Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Prison Arts Collective drawing. So I want you to loosen up and grab a piece of paper and try to put a sphere on the paper, a round circle. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just get a feel. You're probably going to have several lines that you can see, and that's good. And it's called restating, so we're just going to keep restating until we see the circle starting to develop in front of us. Now, I circled a little bit of the highlight up at the top. I always like my light source to come from the right top down. And I really like to spin the paper around so that I get varied strokes. That's where the shadow is going to be. So I'm going to start committing and make it a little bit darker down there so that I can see. I'm going around the contour. Okay, this is going to be very lightly because there's our light source right here. The light's going to shine, and that's going to be the lightest part on the sphere. From there, I'm going to start the value scale, and I'm just going to start getting darker and darker and darker as I go down towards the bottom. In this area, you've got to very finely tune that shadow coming around the highlight, but still show the edge of the sphere. Okay, I'm going to commit to a little bit more down in here. And the value scale should be an even grade, a gradual grade, going down very smooth. Of course, if it's an orange, it's going to have texture. And if it's an apple, it's going to be nice and soft and smooth. As you can see, I really like to turn it around and just kind of start filling little areas and getting a feel of it is actually what I'm doing. It will come to you if you just relax and allow yourself to develop it. As you can see, I don't commit to anything really quick. So the oval starts at the light source and it goes down and gets larger and larger and larger until it reaches the outside contour of the sphere down where the shadow is going to be. And that's what I'm trying to fill in right here. That's starting to look a little round. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and commit and make it a lot darker. This is what really makes the sphere look three-dimensional, is when you put a very dark shadow back here. A lot of people are afraid to put pencil on a drawing, and it's the darkness that makes the light pop. So again, I'm spinning it. This is the natural arch of your hand. If you set your palm, your hand down to draw, you can see that the natural arch goes around. You should utilize that to your advantage. I'm going to slowly start darkening down the value. When I'm up towards the highlight, I'm trying to be very, very cautious. And when I'm done, I'm going to put a very fine line that wraps around the backside of the highlight. I like to also show the strokes there look round. I like to leave those in there because it helps trick the mind into believing that the image we're creating is actually round. Remember, we're taking a flat piece of paper and we're trying to look like there's something sitting there that has volume that you can reach around. Okay, I'm going to start committing to the shadow now, the hard edge of the sphere. Of course, I can draw this a lot faster, but what we're doing is just relaxing and taking our time. And I'm trying to show you how to do a gradual buildup of value from dark to light. I roll my pencil. You see what I'm doing? I usually roll my pencil, which sharpens my pencil at the same time, but it also lays in more lead with a varied stroke. Creates an interesting little pattern on the paper. So I want you to get used to rolling your pencil if you can, and you'll see other little tricks that I'm going to use here. I use the edge of my left hand, the finger, to make the pencil stop. That way I'm only concerned about one point, where the pencil is going out into midair. So in looking at the sphere, I see a lot of potential. I see some texture that I could develop, but that's not what this exercise is going to be about. I'm going to commit to a little bit more of the roundness. So the eraser is just as important as the lead. Get used to using it. A lot of people feel like they shouldn't use it. I create some of my most interesting textures with an eraser. So utilize it to your advantage. That's where the magic comes in, is creating the highlights. So I want to be very cautious about this area, because as that sphere disappears right there, I want the shadow to be very light, but I want you to see it. I want it to be a clean edge. And as you can see, I'm cross-hatching in just about every direction that I can, slowly building it up. Here's how you make a perfect circle. I want you to take your pinky and set it down on the page. Decide where your pencil is going to be, and then don't move it. Spin the paper around and just keep spinning. I'm going to move it gradually so that you can see how much control you can really have. This was just a fun little idea I wanted you to learn. Everyone can draw a perfect circle. And this is not something we're born with. Drawing is all about just applying certain skills and techniques. And then you can clean it up if you want. And looking at it now, I could actually make it look like it's rolling out of a pipe. But I'm going to go ahead and cast a shadow so that it looks like it's sitting on a table. This is going to be the darkest area on the paper. Get a feel of what you think that shadow is going to look like. And I always flip it upside down because I get a different perspective. That allows me to see things. I will turn every one of my drawings maybe 1,000 times. Especially if I've been drawing for hours, my eye and my mind start to fatigue and I start missing things. So the more I turn it, the more perspectives I get, the more interested my mind stays. Go ahead and start cleaning it up and making some minor adjustments. Not too sure about the bottom, so I think I'll add just a little more. Clean up your edges really nice. So the further a shadow gets away from the object, it starts to fade. But really close, it should be a hard line. And you can experiment with things, setting them on a table and looking at the shadow, the cast shadow. So I really want there to be contrast. And this is where your reflective light is going to come into play. Light will reflect off of the table back onto the sphere. I'm exaggerating it so that I can show you there should be something there. This is where you want to really fine tune a line. Try to find the point of your pencil. Very slowly give yourself a nice, clean, crisp line right there. Not too dark. Remember, that's the highlighted area. Now I can start gradually going darker and darker and darker. There's always adjustments to be made. So as you can see, I use the end of my finger to stop the pencil. So if I want to go crossways across a sharp line, my finger will keep a nice crisp line. But use whatever technique works for you. Again, you'll develop your own technique as you learn to draw. Like I said, we're not trying to do anything perfect here. I just want you to get a very good grasp of how I approach a drawing. Very slow, just having some fun. Fortunately for me, I love drawing. So this for me is an escape or freedom, if you will. As we move into the other basic shapes, we're going to experiment a lot to try to create illusions. But for now, we're just going to focus on some basic, simple shapes. This is what I was speaking of before. Sometimes I like to show round strokes because it tricks the mind into believing that it's round. And I'll go in a few different directions. Especially if you want to add in texture. This gives you lays down a good template for laying in texture. Again, I roll my pencil. For some reason, it seems to fill the tooth of the paper a little bit more than if I'm just drawing with a flat surface. And I want to remind you again, you've got to know what's going on at the end of your pencil. And we'll talk more about that in a future episode. And that's how we draw a sphere. Relax. We're not looking to do anything perfect. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'll see you on the next lesson. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to try something really fun. I want you to take some found objects and throw them on a flat surface. It can be anything. I'm just experimenting here. We're going to take a blank piece of paper and put it over the top. I'm going to use tape so that I can save time. If you want to move them around, but I like to just kind of throw them down randomly. Take the paper down to the table, and what we want is to try to create an impression on the top of the page of the found objects. A lot of times I'm intimidated by looking at a blank piece of paper. This right here is going to give me an unlimited amount of possibilities of where this drawing is going to go. I want you to take a pencil, not too sharp at the point, but one that is sharpened. I want you to feel the objects underneath the paper, and I want you to slowly start making some pencil marks. I like to lay my pencil down on the side in almost all my drawings because it covers a larger surface. I'm feeling for the items and trying to get an idea of what mark might pop up. Take your time. I found that if you take your time, you won't tear through the paper, but if the pencil's too sharp, going over these items, it will cut the paper. But to be honest with you, I get so excited, I just keep on going. Now, the strokes can be in any direction that you want. I'm going to choose to stay consistent with one direction. Anybody can draw. Everybody can draw abstract, and I'm going to prove it to you right now. People would be amazed at what is going to develop I also take torn pieces of paper and set them over the top so that I can add another pattern, perhaps. It is a little bit challenging, but it just adds that extra layer of something curious inside there. I would like for you to experiment with as many different applications in this process as you possibly can. And when you stumble onto something that you feel is successful, share it with someone. I believe each one teach one, each one reach one. We all teach each other how to draw. I don't think this should be limited to just a few people. I think we should show all the tricks to everybody. So sometimes I move the items around. I was interested about the mustard pack. And sometimes I'll go one more time just to see what pops up. I love the shapes that the rubber band leaves. I already see all kinds of things starting to develop right before my eyes. Things that I never could have drawn out of my imagination, but I can see it right before me. For me, this is very exciting. It's not requiring much thought, and yet everything is developing right before my eyes. So I usually turn it in a few different directions to see how I want to approach it. Right now, I'm looking for the very slightest little contrast in the values. And I'm starting to grab certain shapes and outline them. I'm not going to worry too much about shading at this point. I just want to follow along and see what develops. Again, hold your pencil however you want, whatever is comfortable for you. And once again, remember, that eraser is going to be very important. I want you to utilize it. It's good to have a couple of extra erasers around, especially one that has a good, crisp, clean edge, so you can get in for the final detail. I start out looking for some of the shapes that really catch my eye, and I just start going around and draw. I don't know where it's going to take me. Sometimes I'll be heading in one direction and I'll see something even more interesting and I'll change and pursue that direction. Again, we're just going to relax and have some fun. We're not interested in creating a perfect drawing. This is going to be an abstract drawing. It can be anything you want it to be. Therefore, it can't be wrong. I also want you to turn it around so that you have the natural arch of your hand when you're drawing. Again, I turn my drawings and I see another person right now with his arms raised and clothes hanging down. I mean, you're going to continue to see images pop up right before your eyes that you could develop. It's so interesting. But unfortunately, while I was drawing it, I didn't see that guy. You can take this drawing as far as your imagination will take you in what's before you. If you see the shapes, allow your mind to wander and think outside the box. It could be fantasy. You could turn landscapes into animals. It's unlimited, the possibilities that you can have right here. Your job is just to trace the shapes and decide what direction you want to take it in. It is a very time-consuming little process, but for me, all fun. Generally, I'll have a piece of paper under my hand, but starting out, I just get in there. As I start to refine it and put my highlights, I'm doing the magic, which means making things pop and separating and really making it interesting with fine detail. That's when I start using a clean piece of paper so that I can keep the drawing crisp. I see so many interesting shapes in here already that I'm getting excited. Oftentimes, I'll grab little areas and start to refine it and I'll move around because sometimes I'm not totally committed on what it's going to be just yet. And I found through experience that it often changes. The only thing you need is a yellow pencil and a piece of paper and your imagination. And anything else that you can pick up on the ground or in your junk drawer, if you have one. So we're going to talk more about the elements of art. Consisting of line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. But for this exercise, we're not going to talk about color. We're going to talk about value. So a lot of what I'm doing is line work right now. Outlining certain shapes, which will turn into a form, which will create space and texture. So here's where I've taken it so far. I'm excited to see what you've been able to develop. I'll bet it's beautiful. I can't wait to see. Challenge yourself to just relax and have fun. No expectations. Allow yourself to just wander. I will bet you're going to surprise yourself and finally realize you do know how to draw. We can all draw. It's just something we learn. Nobody's born with it.